Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of Into Zimbabwe, a weekly program brought to you by the Zimbabwe Human Rights Monitors platform. I'm your host Karen Manzera, and this week I am joined by Pride Mukono, who is a human rights defender, and we are going to be looking around the issue of MAKOMBORERO HARUZIVISHE's arrest. Pride, welcome.
Thank you, Karen, for inviting me. Good day, viewers.
So let's get right into this. Can you give the viewers a brief background of MAKOMBORERO HARUZIVISHE's arrest?
As I come to the arrest, maybe just to give them a background of who he is as a person. So MAKOMBORERO HARUZIVISHE is a former student leader at the University of Zimbabwe, where he was Secretary General. He was voted to be a Secretary General when he was just in his first year in college. He was then elected to become ZINASU Secretary General as well. That was between the years of 2015 and 2016, where he served with excellence, really. And since he started his activism, he has never stopped. He has been arrested several times. He has been violated several times, suspended from college, and things like that. But that has never really taken the fire out of him. So when it came to this arrest, which happened last year, it started last year, but then again he was then arrested in February of this year, and then detained after being sentenced, and then detained at Harare Remand Prison. So the case basically revolves around allegations that he whistled in town, he blew a whistle in town. That was the basis of the conviction, which was then overturned by the High Court, and he was then given bail pending appeal. But in between last year, when the courts were closed due to COVID-19, and February of this year, it was then the state then alleges that he did not turn up for court, and therefore the warrant of arrest. So it was on the basis of that warrant of arrest that they then did what is known as a default inquiry, which is basically means that they ask you why you did not show up at a particular date in court. And he gave the very valid reasons that I was not due to court because the courts were closed due to COVID-19. I could not have attended because the courts were not in operational. But the magistrate, strangely, did not take that as a valid reason and then cancelled his bail. So his bail in two of the cases were revoked. So the revocation of that bail then meant that he will be detained until the cases have gone to trial. So the challenge with the current scenario is that the courts are not undertaking trials. They're not giving him a trial date. They're not doing the trial so that he can clear himself and gain his freedom. When that bail was revoked, then he paved way for this prolonged detention, where now the courts are not really keen on having him coming to trial. And for now, he has been detained for more than 200 days without trial. And there is no prospect that the states want to take these matters to trial. Therefore, meaning he is going to be detained ad infinitum because the bail was revoked. You cannot appeal against the revocation of bail at the High Court. You have to go back to the court ACO, the same court that is supposed to give him a trial. So that is the predicament that he finds himself in, and it constitutes a gross violation of his freedoms, particularly his liberty, because being detained without trial and without prospects of trial is really gross, and it further constitutes torture and inhuman and degrading treatment, which our constitution doesn't allow. So that is the state of where MAKOMBORERO HARUZIVISHE is at the moment.
Okay, so you are mentioning the circumstances around the arrest of MAKOMBORERO HARUZIVISHE, and I'm actually picking out that, you know, they are the same circumstances around even several other youth activists, the likes of Alan Moyo. Pride, how many fronts are activists fighting against?
I think to really appreciate the circumstances that the fights that activists are engaged in, you've got to understand the reason. The reason detail what is driving the state security mechanism to behave the way it does. And the first thing is that there is fear that because of the economic difficulties that the country is going through, people can stage peaceful uprisings against the government. So once you have understood that, it then realizes that the first front that the activists like Marco, like Alan, like myself, like all others find themselves faced with is the state security mechanisms, particularly the police to start with. So the police, especially the notorious law and order enforcement, actually is a file where they call the troublesome activist, which they have at Harare Central, which is a list of everyone, and people are being monitored, they're being surveilled, there's surveillance, which is illegal anyway. So they continuously update in terms of where you are and what you are doing. So that is the first port of call. And these people, they basically violate your rights by framing cases. If you look at the nature of all the cases that activists are charged with, it has to do with framing. And if you look at the witnesses, they are all state security operatives who come and testify in court. You will never find an ordinary person who says, I saw this person commit a crime, because there's no crime that would have been committed. And then the second front activists find themselves on is within the judiciary, which has been captured by political ends. So you go to court, if you're an ordinary criminal, say someone robbed someone in town, within a week or two they would have been given bail by the courts. If you remember in Rita Shoya, when she was charged with attempting to smuggle gold, she was not even, she was going to be given a bail unopposed. And then there was public outcry. And then that's when they tried to deal that around with the case. But now they've since thrown it out. They said the gold was legitimately hers. If you look at Deli Shingwaya last year, he was arrested for defrauding the government. And Obadiah Moyo never spent a night in cells. So you find that, but if you're an activist, the moment you arrive at Rotten Row court, you know you will not be given bail. No, it's given. Bail will be opposed. And after opposing the bail, when the prosecutors oppose bail, the magistrates will not grant bail, even after making the bail application. And this is very interesting because bail is a right. Naturally, as an accused person, you go to court, you have a right to earn bail. There must be exceptional circumstances for you to be denied bail. For example, that you will not turn up in court. But since these trials have started, we have no cases of activists who have skipped bail. All activists want to stand trial, clear their names, and continue their lives. So that is exactly. So if you talk of France, it is the state securities, particularly the police at law and order section, and the judiciary.
So, Pride, how can Mako get out of this situation?
I think it's not really about Mako himself as a person. It is about to say, how do we begin to put pressure on the powers that be, so that reason can prevail and justice can be served.
We, who are you referring to?
I'm referring firstly to we, his friends, we, his colleagues, fellow activists. I'm also referring to ordinary citizens out there who have an interest, because once we allow a precedent like what is happening to Mako, it can happen to anyone. It's frightening to imagine someone being locked up without prospects of a trial, without any crime that they've practically committed. It can then be used against anyone for political convenience. So whenever it's convenient for even those in the ruling party and in government, should be very afraid, because it means if you fall out of favor with those that are in power at a particular time, they can simply lock you up because they have a precedent that are setting. So I think it is we as Zimbabweans who have to raise our voice, and I think there's an online petition that is going on. We want to increase the numbers so that we can put pressure. And then in terms of how this practically works, so like I said, there's a petition, and then we also need to push this issue with African Commission on People and Human Rights, the ACPR, and there's going to be a UN rapporteur is coming into the country between, I think, 15 and 25 October. And I think as young people and as activists and as ordinary Zimbabweans, we should be able to write to her and demand that she questions the government on the prolonged detention of Makomborero Haruzivishe as a political prisoner, as a prisoner of conscience. He's not a criminal. He's simply being arrested for holding different political views and exercising his fundamental rights of expression, of conscience, and of holding opinions.
Great. And you mentioned that this case of Mako actually instills fear even in other activists and young people out there. So how is it impacting youth participation in politics? Because Section 20 of the Constitution provides that the government should actually promote youth participation in politics.
Yeah, you know what, Karen? It's really interesting that there are all those nice constitutional provisions, but then we have a scenario where young people are being, abused so that they stay out of politics. And the reason is simple. When the young people are the majority in Zimbabwe, constituting about more than 60% of the population. So what it necessarily means that by publicly doing what Mako is going through, showing that if you have different opinions from those that are in power, we can punish you. The message that is being sent is clear and coalesce, that toe the line or else we'll deal with you in this manner. So it definitely has an impact on youth participation, and that's why I find most young people then retreat from participating, because they fear that if I'm caught and then I have to spend more than 200 days in prison and counting, without trial, without prospects of a trial, what will happen to my life? So clearly, this is a well-calculated maneuver to water down youth participation. And when the majority don't participate, democracies die. That's the essence. If the young people stay out of politics, then democracy will just die. And those the powers that be seem to enjoy that kind of turn of events where young people not participate and democratic space is closed.
So are there measures that young people or young activists can actually take to make sure that they don't end up in this situation that Mako is in?
Yes, there are obviously measures, and these measures revolve around being able to engage in civil disobedience, because and mobilizing. So we need civil disobedience first, being able to mobilize and remaining disciplined. So the reason why Mako has been isolated is because there is lack, and it's on everyone's part, my part, fellow activists' part, that we're not mobilizing enough. In 2016, Mako and myself and other activists were arrested, and guess what? There were 74 of us at Shikurubi. Such numbers are not sustainable for the state to keep you in. But if they can isolate you individually, then it's easier for you to, so it comes back to all of us to say, we've got to mobilize, we've got to engage in civil disobedience, and we've got to remain disciplined to desist from acts of violence, acts of hooliganism, because that way we then attract more numbers to our struggles, and people can then, and then once the numbers are high, it's difficult. You can imagine if Mako was arrested with, say, 40 people, even his detention will not be as painful. And when you have 74 people, 100 people, 150 people being charged with the same crime, it even raises international attention on the government to say, you can't tell us that all these people committed the same crime. It's impossible. And two, it overwhelms the prison system. The prison system in Zimbabwe is already, the prisons are congested. So when you then arrest people who are not actual criminals and congest the prisons, it means you've got to release actual criminals, and they will cause havoc. So eventually, if you look at the numbers, when you are more, like when we were arrested in 2016, we spent just 30 days. We had been released after 30 days. Why? Because even the prison officials at Shikurubi wrote a complaint to the commissioner and the Minister of Home Affairs to say, we no longer have space to put these Tajamuka people. So the solution lies in mobilization, civil disobedience, and maintaining strict non-violent discipline.
As a community of youth activists, what aid are you giving to Mako in his current predicament?
One of the backbone of our activism is solidarity. We stand with each other through thick and thin. And currently, as Mako is going through all this, we are offering support. We regularly visit him in prison. We regularly undertake campaigns online. There's a free Mako, what we call Mako Monday, where we regenerate the issues online and post to say we demand his freedom. More importantly, we send him food. We ensure that at any given time, his welfare and that of his family, because also Mako is taking care of his younger brother, is taken care of, so that he doesn't have to stress with while going all through this hardship. He doesn't have to suffer physically. And then the other aspect of what the solidarity we're giving him is also to regularly bring him material to read, books, and things like that, so that he can have something to occupy his mind as he's going through this horrendous time.
Is he in good spirits, and what message does he have, to other youth activists out there or to young people in general?
Yeah, Mako is a very strong person. He is very committed to what he does and very passionate about what he does, and he knows he's innocent. So that has kept him in good spirits. And as ever, he is always saying, let's keep on the fight. Let's keep on pushing for a democratic space and enjoyment of our freedom. But then we were concerned with what happened recently in the last week that we were coming off from. Mako was put in a cell with supposedly mentally challenged inmates. And at night, two of them attempted to strangle him and beat him up. He had a swollen eye when we saw him on last Sunday. And was really concerned about his safety and these mentally challenged guys. And the prison officials are trying to play that issue down to say, no, nothing of that sort happened. But when we saw him, he had a swollen eye and was clearly shaken by what had happened at night. You can imagine waking up and someone is trying to strangle you in the middle of the night. And he had to be saved by other inmates who then restrained these supposedly mentally challenged inmates. But what we know from our government is that these may not even be mentally challenged people. They could be planted people into those cells to physically harm him, because they know they can't take him to court, because if they take him to court, there is no case to answer. So that is the basic concern. But his spirits are high, and he's saying, let's keep on pushing it. I think as young activists, we owe it to ourselves to keep pushing until he regains his freedom.
Mako's life is actually in danger, yet you say he's actually innocent. So is there any emergency aid or any superative power that can come in to save him from this situation?
Like I said initially, the other available avenues is to continuously pressurize the responsible authorities, which is the government of Zimbabwe, President Mnangagwa and his cabinet, to say they've got to release this young man. And the only way to do that, what is available to us is, as we said, we'll be approaching the African Court Commission on Human and People's Rights, ACPR in Banjul. We'll also be writing to the UN in Geneva, the Human Rights Council, to say this is what is happening. This was what happened. We have a political prisoner. And I think when we are able to do that, numbers count. So primarily it is the responsibility of us as Zimbabweans, as young people, to be specific, to raise the voices. Because only political pressure now can be able to push the judiciary to do its job. Take him to trial if they want, or release him if they don't want to take him to trial. So only when such kind of pressure is applied that we have a political prisoner, because he's the only political prisoner in SADC. Even countries like Angola, which were known for hard nut dictatorships, have released their political prisoners. Countries like Mozambique have released their political prisoners. Mako is probably the only political prisoner right now in SADC region, and that is deplorable. So the only way is we've got to mount the pressure on this government, on President Mnangagwa, to do something about it, because those are the powers that be. Those are the people who can ensure that the courts do their job. So that's the only way out for Mako right now, and it requires all of us as Zimbabweans to imagine that if it was a brother, if it was a sister, if it was your father, if it was your son who is going through this moment, what does it mean for that? And like I said, this is not political. It goes across, even those in the ruling party should be worried, should be concerned. Even President Mnangagwa himself should be worried, should be concerned. Because it means that if he has no power today, if he wakes up without power tomorrow, he could go through the same process, be arrested, be locked up, no trial, nothing. So I think it is something that we as Zimbabweans, and is across the political divide, across religions, across whatever creed or beliefs we have, we must come together and say this young man must be released. If there's an issue, take him to trial and resolve the issue. So I think that's the only way. So the only way is political pressure on the government of Zimbabwe to release him.
So over the past few years, we have seen the prosecution and the arbitrary arrests of activists or youths participating in politics. And now we are moving into the 2023 elections. What message do you have to young people who are actually discouraged from participating in politics?
My message is simple. Numbers matter. And in politics and in elections and in democracies, it is about the numbers. So we've got to rise. Because when you are counted down and you accept being counted down, it means that those that are counting you down are getting the results on a silver platter. We must raise the cost, as we put it in political language, to raise the cost of authoritarian rule. It must be very expensive to oppress people. And we can only make it expensive by mobilizing, by educating each other, by remaining non-violent, by engaging in civil disobedience. So as we are going towards 2023, I urge young people to register in numbers, to raise their voices, to mobilize their communities, and more importantly, to stand in solidarity with each other. If one of us is arrested, we should show up in our numbers at court. We should show up in numbers at our local police station and ask why have they been arrested. If they say they wanted to subvert or they were participating in illegal gathering, you also say, I was part of it. Why not arrest me as well? So that we raise the cost of doing it. So you can imagine, even at a police station level, it's easy to process one person who's been arrested, but processing 150. I was there at Law and Order at one time when these huge numbers. Mistakes could be made in terms of spelling mistakes, but these are also humans. And they get frustrated to say, okay, but why are we even doing this? You see. So I think that's what young people must do. The numbers matter. Let's mobilize ourselves and let's be very active.
talk to us about the methods of mobilization that are actually safe, especially, you know, in the wake of the COVID-19, and that are actually, you know, convenient even for young people.
Yeah, and I'm sure most young people are hooked online. As they're going to be viewing this video, it means they have a smartphone. So the first thing is really to start to mobilize each other. Look at your contact list. How many times do you ask in your groups if people are registered to vote? So share the information online, use Facebook, use WhatsApp, use Twitter to mobilize each other. Secondly, peer-to-peer. How many times do you meet your girlfriend, your drinking mates, or your sporting mates, your jogging mates, and ask them about fundamental issues of voter registration, about human rights, about freedoms, about even issues like development in your own community. So discuss these as peers in your safe spaces where no one will come and say, why are you discussing these issues? Within the family itself, let's talk to our mothers, let's talk to our fathers, let's talk to our young brothers, let's talk to our sisters, and we do that. And then door to door. How many times do you walk around and talk to your neighbors to say, okay, these are the issues that are there. There's a voter registration going on, it's being done at this particular space or particular place, or there's this issue that is happening in the country. What are your views on it? So we've got to be active and like we said, and try to remain as safe as possible. But the biggest safety we can have is our numbers. So as long as we're able to do these things across the country in large numbers, there's nothing that the state can do. They can only target so much, a few individuals. But if it's being done by millions of young people across Zimbabwe, they're speaking to their neighbors, they're speaking in their spaces, they're mobilizing online, they can only watch. There's nothing that they can do. They don't have the capacity and the resources to be able to monitor and follow up on everyone else. So that, I think those are the safe methods that we can do as young people.
So it all comes back to the issue of numbers.
Yes.
So remember, young people do go to register to vote and actually turn out to vote. So from myself, Karen Manzera, and the crew behind the scenes, it's goodbye for now.